The rules changed overnight. Billions in compliance costs vanished. Tech giants, Google, Meta, Amazon, walked away stronger than ever. European regulators lost their grip. The Digital Markets Act, once a looming threat, now looks toothless. No one can say who's in charge. The balance of power has shifted. Control is up for grabs. This wasn't just a policy tweak, it was a retreat. The European Union, long seen as the world's toughest tech regulator, blinked first. For years, Brussels promised to rein in Silicon Valley. Now the threat is gone. Boardrooms in California are celebrating. European lawmakers are silent. The message is clear. Even the most ambitious rules can be reversed. The question is, who made that possible? But the consequences run deeper. The sudden reversal exposed a vulnerability at the heart of European governance. The institutions that claimed authority over global tech have revealed their limits. The world's largest digital platforms now operate with less oversight, not more. The promise of a level playing field has evaporated. The risk is not just regulatory failure, but a permanent shift in who sets the terms of digital commerce. The Digital Markets Act was designed to force big tech to open up. It targeted self-preferencing, data hoarding, and anti-competitive bundling. Companies spent years preparing for sweeping audits and fines. Investors braced for disruption. Compliance teams grew. Legal budgets ballooned. The expectation was clear. The era of unchecked dominance was ending. But behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Lobbyists flooded Brussels, outnumbering policymakers. National governments hesitated, wary of harming domestic interests or losing investment. Enforcement agencies faced resource gaps. Staffing, expertise, and funding all fell short of the challenge. Quietly, the scope of the rules shrank. Exemptions multiplied. Deadlines slipped. The public heard little. Insiders saw the shift coming. The regulatory machine slowed, then stalled. The mechanism was not a single decision. It was a series of concessions, each justified, each incremental, each seemingly minor. First, regulators delayed key provisions, citing technical complexity. Implementation dates were pushed back, sometimes by months, sometimes by years. Then they narrowed definitions of what counted as a gatekeeper. Some platforms were quietly reclassified, moving outside the law's reach. Enforcement budgets were trimmed, with resources redirected to dialogue and stakeholder engagement. The threat of billion-euro fines faded. Instead, regulators offered cooperation and voluntary compliance. The process became opaque. Companies that once feared audits now negotiated terms. Legal teams from big tech found every ambiguity, every loophole. Compliance became a negotiation, not an obligation. For example, Amazon's marketplace was initially targeted for strict data sharing requirements, but the final rules allowed the company to keep key datasets private, citing technical feasibility and business confidentiality. The European Union's internal divisions deepened the retreat. Some member states pushed for national carve-outs, seeking to shield favoured companies. Others argued for softer timelines, citing economic uncertainty or technical hurdles. The Commission, facing legal challenges and mounting political pressure, chose flexibility over confrontation. The result, the world's toughest digital rules became voluntary guidelines. The language of enforcement was replaced by the language of partnership. Big tech's legal teams shaped the process from within. Audits were postponed, then quietly abandoned. The regulatory threat that once dominated headlines became a background negotiation, one that big tech was winning. The inflection point came when the first major enforcement action was quietly dropped. No fines, no public rebuke, just a statement about ongoing dialogue. The signal was unmistakable. Companies stopped preparing for audits. Investors stopped pricing in regulatory risk. The threat was gone. The European Union's credibility as a tech regulator collapsed in a single news cycle. On March 14th, 2025, Politico ran the headline, EU shelves probe into Meta's ad practices, citing progress in talks. By the time lawmakers noticed, the window for real enforcement had closed. The market responded instantly. Share prices for targeted platforms rebounded. Compliance budgets were slashed. Internal risk assessments were rewritten. The message was clear. The era of regulatory uncertainty was over. For big tech, the cost of doing business in Europe had just plummeted. For regulators, the loss was not just symbolic, it was structural. The tools of enforcement had been surrendered. This is not just a European story. It's a lesson in how regulatory ambition collides with institutional limits. The European Union's retreat shows how even the most powerful regulators can be outmaneuvered. When enforcement becomes negotiation, rules lose meaning. Capital flows to whoever can shape the rules or escape them. The precedent is clear. Global tech companies now know that regulatory threats can be weathered, delayed, or diluted. The balance of power has shifted, not just in Europe, but everywhere. Digital markets are contested. Other jurisdictions are watching. Policymakers in Washington, London, and Tokyo are recalibrating their own strategies. In April 2025, the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority publicly questioned whether voluntary compliance could ever deliver real accountability and announced a review of its own digital regulation plans. The lesson is not lost on corporate boards. Invest in lobbying, not just compliance. The cost of regulation is now a variable, not a constant. The risk is that future rules, no matter how ambitious, will be seen as starting points for negotiation, not lines in the sand. Regulation is only as strong as the will to enforce it. In the end, the European Union's retreat was not about law, but leverage. The world saw who blinked first. The next time regulators promise to rein in big tech, the question will not be what the rules say, but who is willing to hold the line. The balance of power has shifted, and the consequences will echo far beyond Brussels. Capital rifts, where money breaks,